Hello guys, welcome to another session. So here we will look at the question and then we will try to solve that particular question. So here is the question that you have. Compare and contrast the following concepts: social distancing, social exclusion, and social closure. So what you can do is, there's a structure. It's a very simple, straightforward question. Concept of social distance, concept of social exclusion, concept of social closure, and we'll have to bring up the relation between all of them. So, direct question. I don't think that you'll be facing any problem with respect to this question, right? So, how will you start? What are the concept, right? When you talk about concept of social distance, what's the definition? In fact, everything is clearly given in the PDF and the class also we have covered. So, I'll quickly go through this. So, what I do is each of these, I'll give you a definition, two important thinker, one example. Okay. So, social distance means the degree of acceptance or rejection individuals or groups feel towards one another. So that's what the degree of acceptance or rejection, that it could be between individual or it could be between group that feel one another. So it measures the extent of closeness, extent of interaction, and the integration between the groups in a society. So that's what you mean by social distance. And then if you look at the key thinkers that we need to discuss here is Georg Simmel. Okay, I hope that's very clear. So social distance captures the psychological and cultural space between individuals or groups, according to Georg Simmel. And then you can also talk about Bogardus, right? So develop the social distance scale to measure prejudice and acceptance between racial and ethnic group. So this one I have not discussed in the class, that you can add here. Georg Simmel, clearly I have mentioned. Now, if I want to give you an example, the reluctance to engage socially or intermarry between different castes in India, that you can write an example, the social distancing. That means the caste endogamy, right? Clan exogamy, but caste endogamy. That's what social distancing, again, you can talk about. Social distancing during COVID-19 pandemic, where physical separation reinforced the psychological separation also, or the physical separation actually reinforce the psychological separation, you can say. Now, coming to exclusion, it's more of sociological that we need to discuss. So social exclusion basically refers to the process by which individual or groups are systematically excluded from participating in social, economic, political, or cultural life. That will lead to marginalization and deprivation. So all the dimension that you're talking about, you are systematically excluded from. It could be individual, it could be group, systematically excluded from participating in any social, economic, political, cultural aspect, and that lead to deprivation, that lead to marginalization. You can talk about Amartya Sen here. So social exclusion is both process and a condition which perpetuates inequality. René Lenoir, right, again defined excluded groups as those outside the social mainstream. Dalit, right, excluded from the Varna scheme. So what are the features? This is actually multidimensional. Exclusion operates across income, education, healthcare, political participation. I've discussed all the four dimensions also in the definition itself. And it's often institutionalized through the structural inequalities. That's why I told you systematized. Right. For example, you talk about exclusion of Dalits in India from accessing the commonwealths or temples. Digital exclusion due to lack of access to technology. So the present day, when you talk about digital exclusion. Now coming to, guys, again, write all these in detail as and when, the question demands. Now coming to the concept of social closure. So social closure means the strategies employed by dominant group to restrict access to resources, opportunities, or privileges to outsiders. And that will ensure that the benefit will remain within the group. So you can talk about Max Weber, and then Frank Parkin, very important, right? So Max Weber introduced a concept, emphasizing how groups monopolize opportunities and restrict access to maintain privilege. Frank Parkin extended the same concept and identified, strategies like exclusionary closure. That means denying access to others, and usurpationary closure. That means oppressed groups fighting for inclusion. And if you want to give some example, talk about the professional guilds or caste system that restrict entry into certain occupation. You talk in terms of occupational specialization, but that's not actually the case here, right? Again, legal barriers like citizenship laws, and then that in fact exclude immigrants from the certain rights and benefits. That again depends on the countries, right? Now, what we need is the interconnection. So here you can talk about the relationship. So you can talk about the interconnection, and then you can talk about the contrast. So compare and contrast. So social distance can contribute to social exclusion by fostering the prejudice, stereotypes, and segregation. And that makes the marginalized groups feel unwelcome or undervalued. So social distance can contribute to social exclusion. When you maintain distance, that over a period of time, the marginalized will feel that they are unwelcome. So that lead to social exclusion. You can say that's not a voluntary exclusion. It's involuntary only, but still sometimes when other group maintains social distance, you voluntarily will try to exclude, right? So that you can discuss. We know what is exclusion, what are the different dimensions of exclusion, so I'm not getting into that. The social closure that institutionalizes the social exclusion by creating formal barriers that again reinforce the unequal access to resource and opportunities. So that way you can talk about interconnection. Again, social distance that reflect the attitudes and prejudices that fuel the social closure strategies. So these are the ways in which it's interconnected. Now, the contrast, if you see, the social distance is a psychological and relational, and that focus on subjective feeling of closeness or separation. That's what social distance. Social exclusion is structural. Social distance is psychological. Social exclusion is structural. Social closure is strategic. So social exclusion is structural, and that actually emphasizes the real deprivation of rights and opportunities. Social closure, as I told, is strategic, that highlight the deliberate monopolization of resources by dominant groups. Okay, now examples, of this overlap, I can discuss the caste system in India that demonstrate what social closure, because hereditary occupation restriction is there, social exclusion, denial of access to resources are there, and social distance, prejudice and segregation on the basis of, purity, impurity, and different other things also. During the COVID-19 pandemic, what happened? Social distancing to prevent disease transmission that exacerbated the social exclusion for marginalized groups like migrants and daily wage workers, as they lacked access to healthcare and social security. So now, to conclude this particular question, rather than talking about all these hierarchies and other things in detail, social distance, social exclusion, social closure are interconnected concepts, and they explain different dimensions of inequality and marginalization in society. So social distance captures the subjective attitude, the psychological dimension, and the psychological separation. Social exclusion addresses structural deprivation of opportunities. And the social closure highlight the deliberate strategies used to monopolize resources. So remember, when we talk about social distance, it's psychological. Social exclusion, it's structural. Social, when we talk about the social closure, it is strategic, deliberate attempt. Right? So all the three concepts together, in fact, offer a comprehensive framework for analyzing and addressing the social inequalities, because all these are pointing towards what? That social inequality. So guys, that's about this particular topic, a very simple one. I hope the answer is very clear to all of you. The concepts are very clear. So that's about the session. If you like the video, share it with your friends who are again preparing with sociology. If you are looking for sociology mentorship or test series with us and the course, you can check out the details in the description and get in touch with us. So see you guys in the next session. Thank you so much.